and what I've got to say. But yeah, seen a lot of stuff on AI recently, and I don't know whether this is just because of the space I'm in. So for context, I'm in the commercial space, which is not necessarily huge accounts, and I've still got a lot of contacts still in SDR, BDR, and obviously the way in which AI is transforming how they're booking meetings, qualifying those meetings, is all over LinkedIn. And so what I've been playing around with for a few weeks now is including that leverage of AI, but then also kind of figuring out where to keep my old sales process the same and knowing kind of when to stop. And there's a few things that Harrison, can you not hear anything? Can you not hear me? We'll figure that out later. But I think what I can recommend is just leave and rejoin. So what do we mean by authenticity? This is sort of it's basically just who you are. And I think when it comes down to what AI can do for people, it kind of brings away from sales as that person-to-person process and those sorts of building trust through the conversations that we have with people. I think what has happened, especially since COVID, right, everyone's just hidden behind a screen a lot more, which is understandable. It's a very productive way of working. But especially now that AI is taking the position that it is, it's quite difficult to know when to stop that surge, because now we're hiding behind screens and now the work isn't even getting done by some people. It's very easy to just sit back and let a lot of those challenges be resolved by a lot of these tools. And this actually got me thinking around sort of what authenticity we can keep or retain. The big thing for me was, obviously on the phone, you can't really take that out. So that's sort of one thing that will always stay the same. But I'd be interested to get other people's opinions on this. It would be emails. So kind of like not even the follow-up emails, but just sort of prospecting, how we solve the problem, stuff like that. It's very easy to tell what's been written by AI and what's not. And I think one of the most crucial parts of outreach is knowing how to solve that problem in as few sentences as possible, right? Your value proposition. And by getting AI to write this email, you're not really considering how the problem applies to the industry and this is purely B2B, right? Not really applies to the persona, doesn't really apply to the industry that you're prospecting into. And sort of that practice of not really writing that down again and again will sort of build up into you understanding less of how your problem is actually, or how your solution is actually solving that problem. So that was a big thing for me. And I think I'd like to draw from the wealth of knowledge we have in this chat. So I've only been prospecting sort of in the new business space.
Okay, so you're doing it in a prospect. So you're doing it like a prospecting. You're using it as an outbound tool. And you're using AI. Okay, that's fine. All right.
Yeah. So
that's why I was trying to look at it.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think something got lost. So new business purely on that prospecting play, right? And I think when it comes down to it, I've seen people in my team leverage AI to write those cadences for them. And I think one thing that I used to lead on quite a lot was past conversations that I've had, whether that's sort of like leveraging the case studies themselves or specific kind of niche problems that only come around from talking to people around that kind of specific issue. And so as a whole, if you let AI do that, it's just going to look at websites, it's going to look at case studies, it's going to look at the broader problems that you solve, when in actual fact, the problems don't necessarily line up with the annoyances. The annoyances come from the problems, and the annoyances only come into play when you're talking to these people. And so by regurgitating some of that, it's quite inhuman, and you're touching on too high a level. Whereas I always found the connection came from actually having spoken to these people and then going into a little bit of detail into what the problem is, how people are trying to fix it, and condensing that was the skill. But yeah, if anyone else is coming at this from a different perspective, please, I would love to hear how you're sort of leveraging AI or any of those other examples that Carl mentioned. Carl, yourself, is there sort of one of those areas that you realize?
I think what you're pointing out, which is where AI fails all the time, it's not there yet that I've seen. Now, I'm not sure there is a product there where you're talking about nuance, and that AI does not pick up nuances, which is good news for us. We could be employed. This is a very good thing. They don't need us. They're not taking us. They're not going to be coming down and using us for food or batteries. So that's a good thing, the AI. But yeah, so you still need to be what we call a person in the loop, man in the loop. And when you get rid of that, when you abdicate that to AI, you are it blows up. You know, even in the customer service realm or regard, and I'm not even talking. I don't really implement anything in customer service, but there you have an interaction. Somebody's got a problem. You got a script of scenarios that are going on. If you're not having somebody to look at that and see that, you know, how many times have you sat with a chat and you go, "This, I just got to talk to a human being," and you know, because it's just, or you get that phone call and it's like, all right, well, before I send you, let me just check. You know, it's the same thing. Even though we've rebranded it, it's still part of that. If we lose that connectivity, those are opportunities for us to make money.
100%.
Pain, where we find the pain, where we find the nuance, is where we find the opportunity.
And I was going to add to that, like recently, obviously, I don't know if any of you saw with HubSpot that it integrates with ChatGPT. So therefore it can look at like your notes and stuff like that, which I think would be a bit of a game changer, trying to find those nuances that you've written in your CRM. But yeah, it's the input that you put into it, isn't it? So like people say like, write me a cadence, this is my ICP, it misses the nuances, but if you can actually look at your data and your notes from the meetings, stuff like that, the transcripts, then we might lose our jobs.
But I keep on seeing all the wrong things. You know, yeah. I record almost all my transcripts of all my and I send it up there, and I look at it and I go, when it comes back to the action steps, it may have taken a little side conversation and made that the main point, where I'm like, wait a second, I talked about this, and this was critical, and it wasn't grabbing that. So you still need somebody to direct it. And I mean, even in, let's say, Copilot from Microsoft, and Scott, and I'm not talking about one brand versus another, but in Copilot, you can look at your own files. You can search them back for those things, and much, you know, in there. And I think that's what ChatGPT is going there, but it needs more governance. But between the two, you still need to nudge it. It still requires a driver. It's not driverless.
Yeah. It's a great point. And I think it kind of leads on to my next slide very, very well, because I think back to my previous point, people are using it more as a crutch, and they're leaning on it a little bit too much. So for example, I don't like making slides. AI made these slides for me, but the content was something that I kind of tweaked a little bit as well. If you saw the original slides, it would have been, you know, so much less entertaining. But it's sort of that automation of repetitive tasks. I know sales used to be a lot more administrative. Saying this, I've only been in there 5 years, right? And some of the changes that we've now seen, and Dom's made a fantastic point around even those meeting notes, right? When you're a rep and you're writing down what's happening in those meetings, you miss things. But if you can get back with a follow-up that's, you know, touching on things that you missed in that original call, that is going to speed up that sales process, even if it's just sort of, you know, picking up on one or two extra things or replying to people individually. It's decreasing the amount of time you're spending those administrative things. But I think what we don't want to do is for it to decrease the amount of creativity that we have as well. And creativity as a salesperson is sort of where the nuance lies. You know, that's where where the personality comes through. It's how you're sort of applying the knowledge that you have in a sort of space, especially in the SaaS space, right? Where a lot of people are saying the same things. You can see screenshots of people, you know, saying, you know, quick question. Their entire inbox is full of the same email. Standing out matters. And it's sort of, I reckon the broader sort of scope of AI isn't necessarily to roll out the same bit of information to everyone. As, you know, you both said, it's around leveraging that and making sure that it's working specifically for you. But the more that you go in and the more that everyone else goes in, again, the more you're inching away from what made you so good at the role. And a lot of people, maybe when people come into sales now, it's a little bit different, but the value that AI brings to sales, in my mind, is in automating those repetitive tasks that take up too much of your time to allow you to be more creative. Whether that's making more calls, whether that's mapping out the accounts list a bit better. You know, right now we can take all of those notes from like Gong, upload them straight into Salesforce, so you don't have to do, you know, going through and cleaning out your pipeline all the time. The buying signals are there, identified for you. It's there as sort of more of an assistant than someone doing your job for you. And I think that's very important to remember. And I think the basics, the foundations, still should be practiced, because if you don't do that, then obviously further down the line, a lot of those more advanced practices will fall off as well. If you look at sort of, and this is in any discipline, the people who do very well are the ones that do the basics very well. And even when they've got assistants that can do God knows what for them, and they have so much of their time given back to them, still those basics are repeated because it got them to where they are. And to forget those basics would be to forget sort of what comes from them and the different iterations they're from. So yeah, the value that I see AI bringing isn't necessarily to dim creativity. It's to open you up for more creativity, and it's to be leveraged correctly to give you back as much time as possible, because in the world that we're going into, creativity, and this is wider than sales, right? Creativity and sort of being nuanced, that's going to be valued so much more. But yeah, listen, I'd be very keen to hear if anyone else has something to share on that topic. If not to worry.
I was just gonna say that, like, it's made me really lazy, like AI. Like, I just use it for everything now. Like, and I'm not using my brain, so I'm actually gonna, like, it's like in the week now, I delete like social media on my phone. I actually might like delete ChatGPT, because like just writing like an email, I'm just like, this is what I want you to write it for me. But then again, like you said, then everyone writes the same email. It all looks the same. There's no creativity. Everything's personalized, but not to that specific person. It's to the specific ICP, but everyone else can do that. So I think for me, it's making me lazy, to be honest.
I think it depends kind of what direction you'd like to go in. But if we took a different aspect of sales, let's say public speaking or presenting, if you weren't going to put in the like demonstrations that you're doing yourself, if you were to hide behind sort of virtual demos, when it comes down to that big presentation in front of, even 20, 30 people, and it's live, you somehow feel a lot less confidence because you don't have the hours backing you up. And so obviously we've got a way before that goes. And I think the way in which people are leveraging this when it comes down to emails, as I said towards the start of the call, one thing that is really, really important is knowing the problem that you solve and knowing how to articulate that. And if you're not practicing, you're not iterating from that sort of falls off. Carl, I can see you're itching to go.
Oh yeah, well, I'm just thinking of like, this is something that's not necessarily sales, but it was how I wrote an email with Claude on Saturday. I was out with my family, and I was in New York City, and I saw a YouTuber that I follow. We were in Barnes and Noble, and I said to her, I like watching your videos, and she was very, very nice. Usually, when you meet somebody who's sort of notoriety or something like that, I was very careful to approach. I just wanted to say I was a fan and walk away. And she was like quite the opposite, because she was like, "Oh, my name is, what was it, Brett, and this is Becca, and this is what these are my." And I was like, these are my family. But she was more nice and generous. So I was like, "Oh, as I'm coming back on the train, I'm like, I want to say something nice on one of her videos." So it was like working with an assistant. So I had a conversation, because the first 3 iterations sucked. I was like, I met this YouTuber and everything, and it was like, "Oh, you should, buy their stuff or whatever." I'm like, no, you're not understanding what I'm asking you. And it took some time to say, hey, usually when I meet a celebrity, they're jerks or somebody. And she's not really a celebrity, but she was on The Verge, which is a pretty big website. So I was like, okay, and she said, "Oh yeah," and it wrote it out after that, where it could have still taken me 20, 30 minutes to figure that out. So if I had an assistant, I'd still go through that process. So I think you shouldn't be treating AI like a tool. You should be treating it like an employee. Like when I work with AI, I onboard my personas, meaning that each one of them, in ChatGPT, I've actually got them assigned. So my marketing person does only marketing tasks. My email writing only does that. But I don't just take their first draft or their second. I'm like, you got to review it like you would with an employee and say, "Hey, I want to add this and this." And so for me, sometimes it's not so much, sometimes I get tied up in my head about what to say and how to say it and make it not sound like a blabbering idiot. And so for me, I know we're kind of international here, but Abraham Lincoln, when he gave the Gettysburg Address, it's only 2 minutes long. And they said, how long did it take you to write that? He said, 2 weeks. He said, how long would it have taken you to write a 2-hour speech? He said, I could start right now. Because and his point was to get something really condensed and sharp and on point takes a lot more effort. And that's where, that's, I guess you're looking at the objectives of what that message is or what you're trying to scope. That could sometimes help you with it.
That's a really good point, because I think it's more sort of the task of the condensing more than the actual words itself. And so it's kind of looking at what you've got, and it's getting that starting off point. And so, to echo your words, it's not necessarily going and taking everything they're saying as gospel. It's using that as a way to just give you direction, and just kind of take a lot of that kind of, I guess, that initial hesitance out of the actual condensing of that. That's a really good point. I really love that, Carl.
And just to add on to the element as far as creativity, like I've always been a big fan of just finding ways to stand out and kind of express my personality a little bit. So I like to do things that are a little bit, you can't really replicate with AI. I know there are some AI tools that you can kind of have like a little board or something like that. You can change your name and swap it out, whatever, personalize it with the formatting. But like I like to do things that are a little bit silly. Sometimes I might have a picture or a video and some funny little things like that that's relevant to who I'm speaking to. And so that's where I find AI is not yet at that level yet as well. So, there's ways as a salesperson or ways you connect with individuals, especially when you're breaking the ice, that can help to build that rapport. And I think AI it does a great job of collecting information and the baseline things that might work if you're doing like an email. But if you want to do something a little bit more creative, there are limitations there. So I think that's where, the value of being able to put that little personal touch a little bit more works.
That's a really great point. And I have an example of this today. Right? I think when it comes down to the value that it brings sort of with the, automating repetitive tasks, that's fantastic. But if you were to speak to a prospect, a week after you sat down, had that demo with them, you would more likely remember kind of what's going on in their personal life, the sort of rapport building towards the start of the call, than necessarily all those points throughout. And if you're letting GPT and kind of AI write your notes for that meeting, write the agenda for that next meeting, you're keeping that very business focus, which is good, absolutely. But yeah, to your point, you're not really connecting with the person, building that trust at a personal level. Because at the end of the day, I think I read a stat that people have made up 70% of their mind before they look at your solution to buy it, right? But the trust that you build in them, let's say they've picked 70% and they're going with a competitor, the trust you build in with them, if that kind of works in your favor, they will believe what you say and they're much more likely to, take your recommendations. But if you don't really do that, if you are robotic, if you're not someone that they can connect with, they're not really going to trust that you have any sort of experience with people like that, with personas like that. So yeah, thank you very much for bringing that to me. It's one of those things that, Paolo, please just go for it.
No. No. Just just real quick. I just wanted to add it with Blom. I was saying, I use AI for my emails and just for the quick draft. But one of the things that I really take my time is actually on the subject. So there's this thing called "Show me that you know me." So in the subject, I just need 3 words to know that you know me. I don't know. I just recently posted about South Summit, and I guess if you want to draw my attention, you could put South Summit plus, I don't know, Madrid hot weather plus the name of your company. It doesn't really matter what you write, but the fact that you actually went on my profile just took 5 minutes, and then I don't know, it could even be about your dog. Hey, Tom, I love dogs. You like cats, but it's dog weekday, or the fact that you take that extra minute, and then whatever the email says, of course, we salespeople can see a chat GPT email, pretty quick, but the fact that you showed me that you knew me on the subject, which is what really is going to stand out on my inbox, and then I'll take the time to be like, all right, this is Tom Cox. All right, he sounds like a real person. Oh, shoot. Yeah, he commented on my post. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. But yeah, just to add, I think Yeah, ChatGPT is great. I've used Claude a little bit, but definitely, I use ChatGPT for step 1 and 2, and then I add Paolo my twist, step 3, step 4, and step 5, and then hopefully you'll take 5 minutes to really like, okay, this guy is legit, and let's talk. Give me 5 minutes of your time.
And Paolo, with your show me that you know me, so this is all like manual, or do you figure out a
No,
way to
no,
scale
it's
that
not.
as well?
It's
Yeah.
I've been trying, because so I've been adding people on LinkedIn, and there's a step 1, step 2, step 3. I wish I could automate that, but I can't, and I like that I can't because I actually take the time. I know you personally, Dominic. I know Yudi personally. I know your team. We've had
Yeah.
a chat before, so
Yeah.
that's great. But I still don't know, Carl. And then you know what? Hopefully, I'll be able to meet you one day in person, and we can connect in one shape, way, or form. But yeah, no, it's manual, man. It takes 5 minutes. It takes 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then you're closer to, yeah, the prospects,
Right.
and you actually know them. Whereas like I automate a lot, and yeah, like sometimes I'm on a call with someone that's joined the platform that I've automated that I don't even know that I got, because I automate so much. So that's like the balance, I
Right.
suppose.
I mean, it's also the ticket. It's also the ticket size.
Yeah,
How much time you're going to spend on it. I mean, if you're doing, and I'm not trying to put anything down, please don't take it that way. But if you're doing like a $100,000 sale,
yeah.
there's only so many people you're going to work with on that, as
Your
opposed
time's
to
smaller. Yeah.
the smaller ones where maybe $20 a month or something like that, you're 50 or 100. It's just not going to. It doesn't scale out at the same amount of time.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And usually, when you're going to the lower side, that's where you have to have the bigger people come in for the plays, because that's the only way you can get scaling. So, like, I'm never going to be able to compete with Amazon directly. Sorry to say that.
You never know. One of these days, Carl. You never know.
Directly, I said directly, and I'm okay with it. I'm not gonna tear down a bridge to move a yacht, so it's okay.
Very nice. Listen, I've got nothing more to say except thank you very much, everyone, for turning up and also contributing as well. I think it's very daunting doing these sessions when no one actually says anything. So to have people that actually want to contribute and share what they're thinking is a real treat. And I've enjoyed this very much, and I hope you have too. And if you haven't, please don't tell me.
Good sir.